Hello and welcome to the Project 9 video. Project 9 is exercise 14 on page 557 of your text. This is a very simple program. It deals with using a two-dimensional array to store some data which you're basically loading in your code and do some basic calculations and then output it. Okay, so here's your form. Not much to it. Make sure you center in the screen and put the caption in the text property, and make sure you name everything properly, all the controls and so forth. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 labels and 2 buttons on the form. Okay, these have a fixed property, a fixed border. With the text properties empty, we're going to be putting data in there, some calculations and so forth. All right, enough about that. Let's go to the code behind. All right, so I've got some comments in here, and again, I'll be pausing the video and updating the code. But essentially, if you look at the exercise 14 description, it tells you what you're doing. You're going to display the total sales in each of 3 regions, the total company sales, and the percentage that each region contributed to the total company sales. Pretty straightforward. All right, so what do we need to do first? Well, we need to create an array and some working variables so that we can capture this data in figure 9-60. All right, so let's go ahead and do that to start with. All right, here are my variables that I feel like that I need, or I think that I need. Here's the two-dimensional array. It will automatically size itself if you're going to populate it, so all you have to do is put the comma in there. And so it looks like we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows and 3 columns. Right? If you look at figure 9-60, you'll see that's the case. The month is actually like a row, and then you've got 3 columns: U.S., Canada, and Mexico sales. Now remember that we're dealing with indexes of an array, so we would start at 0. And then we would increment by 1 and go to 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on the rows. So we're really only looping through the rows. We already know what the indices are going to be for the columns, so we don't need a nested loop or anything. Get rid of that. Okay. So I've got integer U.S. Total U.S. sales, total Canada, total Mexico, and int for the company. These are integers, because all these are integers. Don't know how smart that would be to do it that way, but that's the way I did it. So now we need to calculate the totals. Okay, for this I'm using a for loop, and my loop control variable is int row as an integer, and I'm starting at 0, no steps, so that means it's 1, right? And I'm using int sales get upper bound. And I'm saying, you start with row 0 and give me the upper bound, which is what? How many rows are there? There are 6. What's the rule, offset rule by 1 for indices? Well, if you start at 0, it's 1 less than the number of elements. So if I've got 6 rows, 1 through 6, and I start at 0, then obviously the upper bound is going to be 5. And as far as the columns go, if I start at 0 and I've got 3 columns, the upper bound is 1 less than 3, which is 2, all right? But it really doesn't matter that much about that because we're going to hard code those, as you can see here. But anyway, we're starting at 0 for the rows, and we're going to loop through and grab all the data in these 6 rows. We start at 0, and then we go to 5 because that's what that's going to return, and we can set a watch window to show you that when we get there. And we're doing a plus equals, which is the same thing as saying int total sales US equals int total sales US plus, there's the name of our array, right? Int row, whatever current row we're on, just based on this loop right here. It starts at 0 and goes to 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we know that the US, if you look at figure 9-6, where is the US sales located? In which column? It's column 0, index 0. See that? You have to kind of look at the book. And then Canada is at column 1, which is that row, that column. And then for a given row, Mexico is located at column 2. That's the index, okay? Okay, so the only thing left to do now is to display the totals and the percentages. That's relatively straightforward. This is the hardest part right here and right here. It's not much to this project. I don't know why they call it advanced, but it's really not. Anyway. Okay, one thing I forgot to do here is to add them all together and come up with the company total. So that's, we're looping through and we're accumulating these values for the various columns for US, for Canada, and for Mexico, and then we're adding them all together. That gives us our grand total here for the company. And then it's really straightforward. Now that we've got all this stuff in integers, we got to turn it back into strings and format it before we place it in the text property of the labels, right? Display totals and percentages. Label US.text equals int total US dot string, dot toString, which is a property. Okay, so we're saying label US.text equals int total US dot toString. This is a method of the integer object, and the dot operator is how you get to that. It takes, there may be different implementations, but this particular implementation takes a formatting string. It tells it do currency with 0 decimal places, right? Do the same thing for Canada, same thing for Mexico, same thing for the company, and then there are the percentage calculations, right? So we're just doing a little bit of division here. So the US percentage is total US divided by int company dot toString, and P1 is percentage with 1 decimal place. The same thing for here, and the same thing for here, only you're changing the variable names. Okay. Alrighty then, let's go ahead and set a breakpoint. Save this puppy and run it and see what happens. If it throws an error or whatever. Oh, okay, good. There it is. So I've put a breakpoint here just to stop it there. We can go ahead and look at this. Let's add int sales to the watch window. All right. Now this is a two-dimensional array, so you're going to have to expand it. It says length 18, so that's columns times rows. Okay. Look at that. Shows you all your data at all the indices. See that? Let's check this. At 0, 0, that's row 0, column 0, we've got 120,000, and there it is. See how that works? Then at row 0, column 1, we've got 90,000. And then at row 0, column 2, we've got 65,000. All right, then it jumps over to column 1, so that's this column, and you can see that, how that goes, and you can collapse and expand that. All right, so we can look at int row if you want, but it's going to go from 0 to what? 5. How do we know it's going to get a 5? Because this is going to return the upper bound of the rows. So let's stick that in there. You can put expressions in there. It doesn't have to be a variable. See? 5. It tells me to get the upper bound of the rows, and it is 5. And it's just going to loop through here and increment, and it's an accumulator. It's going to accumulate each one of these. We've already gone through that. Now, I'm going to press F5 just to get to the end of this. That will run from the current breakpoint to the end or to the next breakpoint. We don't have another next breakpoint, so it runs to the end. F5 will pop it back up, and there is your output. Really easy, really straightforward. Don't think you have a problem with that. The main thing is to understand how these two-dimensional arrays work, and that looping through them is the way to go, pretty much, okay? Unless you're doing database stuff. So exit, and I will see you at the next video.